start off really, I think, myself by asking Rafi. I mean, Rafi, you're very different from Gatehouse Bank in that your bank is very large. You've done a huge amount of work in this particular area. And I just wondered if you had any advice from your experience for a smaller bank like ours that's starting out on this journey.
Thank you, Charles. I'm really delighted to be in this discussion. So as you highlighted, CIMB as a bank with footprints in ASEAN, we have presence in 4 core markets and 11 non-core markets. We are cut across various segments across retail, commercial banking, and wholesale banking. And many of those segments have some negative impacts to the environment and other ESG factors. So what we have done over the years, we started the journey in 2017, where we realized that, look, we need to have sustainability as a core strategy. And how do we make sure that the entire bank is aligned with that strategy and move towards achieving that sustainability targets? So what we did was we started the process, the journey, by engaging with relevant stakeholders. I thought, we thought we should actually hear the response from our stakeholders, including our shareholders, regulators, our customers, our employees, and also the relevant NGOs. And from those discussions and engagements, we were able to derive about 14 material topics across equality, climate change, and other challenges. And we then mapped that out to the SDGs, the 17 SDGs. And then we chose a few SDGs, for example, like reducing poverty, good health and well-being, and quality education, and so on. So once we have done the material topics after the engagement, and then link it with the UN SDGs, we were able to then derive our targets. And these targets, we then map it to our own countries' targets under the Paris Agreement, the NDCs, nationally determined contributions. So once we've got that roadmap, what we mean by sustainability, what are the material topics and the targets, we then set to create the targets. For example, we say the positive impact side, these are the 10 areas that we need to create the impact. For example, we would say out of the total financing that we have, a certain percentage should be driven towards sustainable finance. So it could be across consumer finance, it could be across commercial banking, and so on. And every year we track the progress. So we publicize the targets, what would be the amount of what we call sustainable finance or positive impact finance. The second one is what is our own emissions, what we call scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, which we call operational emission. So we would have a certain target by 2034. We will be publishing it soon, that this would be our target. Some banks have created what they call or published net zero operational emission targets. That's the second one. The third one is our scope 3 emission targets, the emissions coming from our financing. That one would be a longer tenor because it's a lot more complex, trying to figure out what is the extent and how are we going to mitigate, reduce, and avoid it. And also CSR. We are linking sustainability and CSR as part and parcel of sustainability. Given that we are looking at how we can promote more good and reduce harm, we have to make sure that not only our businesses are aligned, but also our CSR activities. So we have targets across how much we will contribute from our PBT and how much volunteering hours we will commit per employee. All that will be clearly tracked, and we will publish it in our annual sustainability report. And we have what we call a group sustainability council that meets every month to track the progress, just like we will do tracking the progress on the revenue side, on the cost side, on the PBT side. So it's very much the center of doing business within CIMB.
Excellent.
And Charles, as coming from Gatehouse Bank, I want to find out how has the journey been for Gatehouse Bank as a signatory to PRB during the past couple of years, and how have your stakeholders, particularly shareholders and board, responded to this great effort?
Yeah, well, thanks, Rafe, and it's great to hear the progress that you guys are making, and it's something we can also learn from as well. So I really appreciate that. I mean, we were founder signatories to the PRB in 2019, and we're also, thanks to the help of Gefi, we're also sponsors and chair of the reporting principles working group as well, which is really important to measure consistently across all participants. We found it really interesting. So obviously we're a smaller bank, but we are a Sharia compliant bank. So our ethical nature chimes really well with the whole kind of sustainability concepts. So we started off, we had lots of conversations with staff, we had conversations with the board, shareholders alike. And really we came up, not dissimilar to what you're doing, we're measuring scope 1 and 2, we're about to measure scope 3 as well. So initially our aim was to become obviously net neutral, on carbon emissions. So we measured our own emissions, and we were pleased to say that by the end of this year, we will be in a net neutral position, which we're delighted about that. And as you said, we're now moving on to scope 3, much more difficult, but how can we actually help and encourage our clients to be more sustainable in their approach to the environment? So we've already started that. So on our deposit taking activity, our savings, we launched green saver accounts, where obviously we plant trees in the UK on behalf of our clients, and the clients get the benefits of the carbon offset, not the bank. So it's not just to utilize for ourselves, it's for the clients as well. We've planted over 7,000 trees this year in the UK, which is a really good start. And now obviously we're planning and targeting the scope 3. And for us, that's really about our home financing business predominantly. That's our core business. So the Sharia equivalent of mortgages. And what we're looking is working with clients to encourage them through products to actually make their homes greener, make the heating systems more efficient. All that we'll be doing during the remainder of 2021 and into 2022. So I think we're on a good journey. Our shareholders think it's fantastic. They support it thoroughly. Our shareholders are Middle Eastern shareholders, even though we're a UK bank. So we've got a breadth of opinion, a breadth of diversity across the world, really, which is quite good for a small bank. So we're going to continue that at pace and measure targets as you've described. And I'm quite sure we'll be looking at you guys in the rear view mirror to make sure we're actually making use of your best practice, which I'm sure you won't mind.
Excellent. So delighted to hear about the excellent progress being made by Gatehouse Bank. And one of the things we have found, you have joined, you are a founding signatory to UN PRB. If you remember, we were one of the founding signatories. There were 132 founding signatories at that time.
That's right.
And the current numbers of signatories has grown to about 240 across 69 countries and over $60 trillion in assets under management. And what we found is that only 5 Islamic players within the 240 signatories. Yeah. And we have more than few hundred Islamic banks and financial institutions today. Yeah. So what is stopping Islamic banks to be part of this exciting journey towards becoming a sustainable bank? And being in Gatehouse Bank, being a fully Sharia compliant bank, was the journey a lot easier compared to other banks who are in a similar position?
I think it's difficult to say. I think the reason why we were keen to be founder signatories was that we thought it just chimed absolutely consistently with our ethics and our background and our way of doing business. It's so similar. That's why I think we need to make between ourselves as Islamic institutions, we need to keep promoting as we're doing now and bring the benefits and the kind of almost like camaraderie-ship of this organization to other Islamic finance banking institutions. So I would expect and hope to see a lot more join this group in due course. I'm sure you must see it very consistent with your ethics and your principles. Would that be correct?
Absolutely. So what we found is that when we embarked on this journey, I was the CEO of CIMB Islamic at that time, and Bank Negara Malaysia has just launched the value-based intermediation. And we were one of what we call these founding members, what we call the community of practitioners. So CIMB Islamic was one of the founding members. And it was very much aligned with the sustainability ambition. And we thought that if it's good for Islamic Bank, surely it should be good for the group. So through the Islamic banking angle and with the patronage and support of Bank Negara, we brought this sustainability ambition towards the group, and the group really embraced it wholeheartedly back in 2017 and 2018. We spent the time to come up with the framework, and from 2019 we have actually joined the UNEP-FI, became a member of the UNPRB. So there was complete alignment between the board of the group as well as the Islamic board. Now, what we have seen is that when we approach the Islamic banks, many of them have this, they are in the comfort zone that we are already Sharia compliant. And good thing about being a Sharia compliant bank is that you already have a Sharia framework that caters for what we call the negative impacts. So if you're an Islamic
but not
bank,
necessarily sustainable. Not necessarily sustainable.
Absolutely, right? So the shift from being what we call negative impact focus towards actually both positive impact as well as a broader negative impact, I think has not fully registered with the Islamic banks.
I think it will. Right? And I think, you know, we're delighted, of course, that we're hosting COP26 in Glasgow this year. In fact, it's very soon. And I think, you know, that will have a lot of government focus, as it already has. And I think certainly within the UK, that will continue, I think, to promote the benefits of other banks joining, certainly in the UK, you know, this journey and being more formal. So I think the problem with some of our UK banks is they, in their own minds, they believe they are moving down this journey, but doing it in a silo. The important thing, I think, is that we all share the kind of the ups and downs of the journey and learn from it, really, from each other, because there's so many different types of banks participating and other institutions. I mean, you guys invest in forests and the like already, don't you? You have big portfolios.
So what we have done is that when we look at our framework, first thing we need to do is do no harm. That is the philosophy behind that framework. And the second one is do more good. And if you look at it, this is the very essence of Islamic banking, right? When you start Islamic banking, the first thing they teach you is that Islamic banking is aligned with Maqasid Al-Shariah. And if you just translate it in English, Maqasid is basically the literal translation is the true intent of the lawgiver. So when the law was given, the revealed law, it has a purpose, and that purpose is to preserve what God has created. And that preservation is driven by humans' responsibility as what we call the Khalifa, or the steward for the planet. So as stewards, we have to ensure that not only we consume responsibly, but we have to make sure that we promote good and reduce harm. So this is how Islamic banking has been, you know, growing over the years, or focusing over the years. But I think where we are lacking as Islamic banks is that we, as you rightly pointed out, we don't go beyond the original scope of Maqasid. If you look at it, this Maqasid philosophy was developed back in the 12th century by a prominent scholar called Al-Ghazali, where he looked at, from his viewpoint at that time, where he said that, look, we need to make sure there is no harm created and more benefit being generated in these 5 areas across religion, life, lineage, intellect, and property. Of course, he didn't cover environment, but life and property is linked to the environment. So you can expand it. And that's where I think we have not really expanded. And being part of UNEP-FI and being, you know, a signatory to UNPRB, I genuinely think will help tremendously. It will really help Islamic banks to broaden their own Maqasid, so that, you know, they can be part of this exciting journey.
Yeah, no, totally agree, Rafi. Yeah, I mean, for us in particular, the journey we're on, the really challenging stage is coming up, and that is, how do we have a trajectory towards net zero? I know net neutral, fine, we're pretty much there now. Net zero, much more difficult. So we're building our plans at the moment and the targets around that. And obviously, we can only do that if we have an influential impact on our customers. That's really, by ourselves can't do it. It has to be through our customers. And actually, we've got a lot more communication to do with customers over the next year or so. We really need to, you know, increase the proactivity with customers. I think more and more, I can only speak really for the UK. UK customers are increasingly aware of organizations' treatment of the planet, increasingly, and they're more and more concerned about the products that we produce do they harm or do they help the environment? And I think that's really where the challenge is coming up. It's a fascinating challenge, but that's the hard bit. But I think we're all really keen to get to that point. It'll take several years to get to net zero, obviously, as it will for the whole economy. But yeah, so we're looking forward to that journey, really.
So we, after setting up the framework and the targets, we basically started by pointing out to ourselves that we need to walk the talk. So before we tell our customers, engage our customers to reduce their own negative impact and promote positive impact, we said we must reduce the negative impact. So we, as you rightly pointed out, we started measuring our own scope 1 and scope 2. How much electricity we use, water we consume, paper that we recycle, and the business travels, all that is being measured. And we need to make sure we avoid some of the leakages, excesses. We reduce by going into more energy efficient solutions and renewable energy. And to the extent that we're not able to avoid or reduce, we will find carbon offsets. So these are the 3-pronged strategy we have in terms of reducing our scope 1 and scope 2. And then for our own customers, we have categorized them into prohibited sectors, like what Islamic Banking has done. These sectors we will not finance, period. And then we have high-risk sectors, forestry, coal, oil and gas, mining, and so on, where we have certain criteria. If you meet those criteria, then we will finance. Like coal, for example, we are exiting. And there are certain, like palm oil, we will only finance if they have NDPE, no deforestation, peat and exploitation commitments, and they are certified, either RSPO or locally MSPO.
That's good.
And that will have to go through what we call the enhanced sustainability due diligence. So there's a process, which is very similar to Islamic banking, right? You have the Sharia process. You look at the purpose of financing, right?
Exactly.
And the nature of the
prohibited areas,
prohibited areas, and so on. So it's very aligned with Islamic banking, but is much broader. So by having this, we are able to quantify. This is the extent of exposure we will have in certain high-risk sectors. And year on year, we're going to reduce that. At the same time, we need to make sure our portfolio doesn't get reduced over time. We need to build the bank. So we are making sure that we go into positive impact sectors like circular economy, renewable energy, and so on.
Cool, yeah. One of the interesting things is that as you measure, and we all measure, the improvement in our footprint. I mean, you mentioned the business travel. In our kind of industries, historically, there's been a huge amount of business travel worldwide. Now, obviously, during the pandemic, that's been suppressed because people couldn't travel. So it's really measuring 2019 with 2021. It would be a mistake. I think, you can't use 2020 or late 2019 as the benchmark. It's a kind of, that was an artificial thing. So I think the main thing is we are measuring realistically, on the trends. But I think I think what this is doing, it will naturally, I think, almost like force institutions to reevaluate how they do business to some extent. So we do these Teams calls, Zoom calls, so they're great, and the footprint is really, really small, but there has to be some face-to-face interaction. That's how humans operate, really. So it's finding out the right blend. I think it will be interesting going forward, and hopefully people don't have short memories and rush back to international travel too frequently. And I think that's our job, isn't it? In businesses, as business leaders, to lead by example and to make sure that our staff are really only traveling long distance when absolutely necessary.
I think once you have got the target, so the moment we go for us, we have what we call the net zero operational emission target that goes beyond carbon. We look at entire GHG emissions. So that would mean, since we have a target, we need to reduce. So either we reduce our travels or reduce the floor space, create more efficiency, and look at ways of using renewable energy. So I think since we have put in the target, we have to be more circumscribed in terms of how we use the available credit in terms of GHG that we can utilize during the year. Now, in terms of your own experience at Gatehouse Bank, how has been the reception among your customers when you go out and engage with them, saying that, look, you have joined the PRB movement and you are advocating to your customers? Has the reception been positive?
Well, very positive, yeah. I mean, basically, we did a survey of our savings customers. I mean, this was, just as we were launching our green saver account, where we offset the footprint of ourselves into forests. I mean, over 80% of customers thought that was extremely positive, and it influenced their decision in coming to us. Because as elsewhere in the world, in the UK, there's huge competition for savings balances, deposit account holders, huge competition. And actually, what is interesting is that the independent survey we did showed that the green credentials of what we were trying to do was a positive influencer in their decision as to where to place their deposits. So that's a really encouraging trend. So customers will keep their own institutions honest, as well as we're trying to do it ourselves. There's nothing more powerful than the customer voting with their feet. And so I think we're seeing increasingly customers asking us questions at the time they do deals with us. What is our philosophy around this? How do we prove that we are carbon neutral if we say we are? So we, as I'm sure you will have done similar things. We used an independent, the Carbon Trust, which is in the UK, which is an independent body, which validated our own statistics on our footprint. And we've started to publish those, broadly in our annual accounts on our website, so people can see them as much as possible. But I think increasingly, and as the younger generations are coming through and looking for financial products, they are increasingly being very critical of what institutions are doing. And I think a combination of that plus our positive, activity will make a huge difference. I really do think it is. I think we're almost at a bit of a pivot point actually now, where my sort of generation who are buying products years ago, it was all about what's the cheapest product, what's the best value. Now it's got to be good value, but it's also got to have the right kind of ethos around it as well. And the more we can perpetuate that, the better, really.
Even when you buy a ticket now, some airlines clearly provide that you can offset your carbon emissions by contributing to a particular conservation cause. I think what's really interesting is that if you can showcase how being sustainable, which is aligned with Sharia compliance, has helped Gatehouse Bank to flourish in the UK market. If there's a clear case study,
that's right,
that could help a lot of the Islamic banks who are indecisive whether to be on this journey, because I genuinely think it's an exciting journey, which is going to be in the medium to long run benefit the Islamic banks tremendously.
That's right.
And these case studies need to be showcased with the organizations in those regions. For example, SIBAFI, which has got a significant influence in the Middle East, and RFI, Responsible Finance Institute Foundation, that could promote these what we call Islamic banks to join these movements and then come up with their own commitments, targets, and then be part of this change, the global change towards sustainability. Do you see? Sorry, go ahead.
No, so Rafi, does your board take a very proactive interest in what you're doing?
So we have a sustainability champion in all the boards. For example, the group board, one of the board members is a sustainability champion. Same goes for the bank board. And we also have what we call the board sustainability committee, just like you have board audit committee and board, what we call this compliance and risk committee. We have a board sustainability committee. So it's all management level as well as the board level. There's complete alignment and governance.
Excellent.
So that has really helped us to flourish in this space.
Absolutely. No, it's great. And actually, I really applaud what you guys are doing. And, I think, going forward, there's a lot we can learn. I think, as we said, if we can encourage other Islamic and non-Islamic institutions to join, I think it'll just have an even more powerful voice, across the world. So I think we probably have to wrap up now. But I think it's been delightful to talk to you, Rafi. And we are learning a lot from what you guys are doing. And we're out there pushing ourselves as hard as we can
Absolutely.
into this area as well. So
though we have put in a lot of effort, we are still at an early stage.
Yeah,
there's a lot more work to be done, particularly complying with the disclosure under TCFD, and coming up with the what we call transition risk and physical risk analysis.
Yeah.
So it's still a long journey, but I think we are heading in the right direction.
Yeah,
and we
hopefully
hope
both
many
of us
others
too.
will join us.
Exactly. Great to talk to you anyway, and
Thank you,
all the
Charles.
very best. Thank you.
Thank you.